recording, okay?
Okay. Okay, so you tell me what I have to do when I can start.
Yeah, babe, you need to make me host so I can
Yeah,
share this.
I'm looking for your name in the list, so you see which. I can see Laura, I can see Laura, I can, yeah, there is, I think, yes. Yeah, there. Well, you are the host now.
Okay.
Not you, Lucia.
Luisa, you can share now. We can try. Okay, great.
Finally, thank
you. I'm sorry because it's the first time for me, so I don't know this program.
No, you have done it several times, and you have been moderating towards this session.
But yes, I'm not
You see, you have seen the crowd here, and you just.
Okay. So if you want, we can start.
So should we put off our mics?
Yeah, okay.
So you have to introduce first, you see.
Oh,
Eleonora?
okay. Yeah.
You have to introduce and invite, and then.
Yeah, I present them. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. So hello to everybody. Welcome to the ICOM Family Forum. Today we celebrate the International Museums Day, and we have 4 hosts from the Latin America, Dominican Republic. It's Republic Dominican. How do you say in English?
Dominican Republic.
Okay. So, Dominican Republic, great. So we have for us with us, and they will talk about an issue very important for us. The issue is the power of museum to become light in darkness. How Dominican museums survived the pandemic. So the first that will show this issue is the president ICOM de la República Dominicana, Luisa de Peña. The second that host that will talk about it will be Laura Pérez, directora adjunta Museo Memorial de la Resistencia. The third host is María Elena Aguayo, directora ejecutiva Fundación Eduardo León Jiménez. I don't know if I read well in Spanish. And the fourth is Soraya Pérez, especialista en museología y educación. Well, we can try. We can start with the first, if you can, Luisa de Peña. Hello.
Thank you, Eleonora.
Hello. How are you?
Thank you to everybody who are with us. I'm sorry about the technical issue, but well, Dominican Republic is a small country. We are about 11 million inhabitants, and we have about 50 museums. Today, we are celebrating the International Museum Day, well, this week. And the theme that ICOM choose, that we all national and international committees choose, is the power of museum. Museum, and this is a very interesting theme, because museums have the power of transforming society through education. The power of museums are really have no match, because museums are places for discovery, are places for knowledge, share knowledge, and as museum we safeguard our heritage, but we use it to build a new society. So I can suggest that we work in 3 lines during this year of the International Museum Day theme. And the first one is the power of achievement, achieving sustainability. Museums are a strategic partner in the implementation of sustainable development goals of the United Nations. As key actor in their local community, they contribute to a wide variety of goals, which include fostering short circuit of social economy and disseminating scientific information on environmental challenges. This is very interesting because so far, museums, ICOM made this investigation and said that we as museum can contribute to 3 basic objectives of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The first one is the objective 10.2 about inclusion. How can we contribute to social inclusion, either economic inclusion and political inclusion of all people, no matter the age, sex, any race, origin, religion. So museums have to be open spaces and especially safe spaces for everybody, for the inclusion. Another objective that we can work on is the objective 4.7 about quality in education. Museums are institutions who basically we educate, we safeguard the heritage, but we educate about that. So it's the best place to acquire even theory and practice knowledge about everyday life through the study of our heritage. So this is a place where we can talk about sustainable development. We can talk about new lifestyle of sustainability. We can talk about human rights. We can talk about gender equality. We can talk about the promotion of peace and no violence culture, which is very important. We can talk about worldwide citizenship, which is very important today that we see all this conflict around the world, and we don't really understand what it means to be a world citizenship, to have a world citizenship, to care about the other, and not be only local or national, to understand that the well-being, planetary well-being, it belongs to everybody. So we need to, as museum, value cultural diversity and contribute to the sustainable development. And the third objective that we can work on in museum is objective 17.17, about alliance, how museum can be, and remember that many years ago, we talked about museum as bridge of a collaboration and a bridge between culture, so different cultures. So this is something very important. How can we be bridge of collaboration within our community and outside our community in the larger international community? So this is basically three of the main objectives that we can work as museum in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The next point that ICOM suggests that we work on museum, the power of museum, is the power of innovating on digitalization and accessibility. Museums have become innovative playing grounds where new technology can be developed and applied to everyday life. Digital innovation can make museums more accessible and engaging, helping audiences understand complex and nuanced concepts. And we just have the best example, and you're gonna hear about it, especially when the Centro León presentation about digitalization and accessibility, because we need to see the pandemic also. It was a worldwide tragedy, but it also was an opportunity. And that's how museums as institution of social change have to approach this, everything that bring down by the pandemic. We have an opportunity. We had the opportunity to transform in a new way of communication, and we need to continue in developing this new way of communication. The digitalization and accessibility open to new publics, because not everybody can afford to come to the museum, but a larger amount of public can access the museum through digital, through digital connection. So now more than ever, we have this digital conference, this virtual conference, and we have transformed also the virtual museum. And in Dominican Republic, we only have a few amount of museums who could do the transformation and who could give service to the society. And we're gonna talk about that later. So the power of museum to reach different public is open now, and we need to grab that definitely and use it to really contribute to changing our society. And that brings us to the third and last line of that I can suggest about this theme, the power of museum, the power of community building through education. Through its collection and programs, museum thread a social fabric that is essential in community building. by upholding democratic values and providing lifelong learning opportunity to all. They contribute to shaping and inform and engage civil society. And even if it's the last one of the line that they suggest, is probably the more easy approach for all of us, because we are already an institution for education. And you can only transform society through education. And museums have the social responsibility to contribute to the building of the community building, definitely. We have a very important role to play. And we saw that during the pandemic, that we became the museum who have any virtual activities, became like the foster of people, because people have nothing to do inside their houses, and we provide light in dark time. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about now. Museums are at the service of society. If we don't service society, we have no reason to be. Museums only survive also if the society acknowledge their service. So it is important that we keep in touch with our community. Museums have definitely to be in touch and work with the community. We are now working as in ICOM, and especially the ICOM Define, which is the standing committee for definition of museum. And we are now on the final stage of this large work that took us several years. And in both of the last definition that we have to vote for one now and then presented to the General Assembly in Prague, the phrase of museum are at the service of society, in both of them are. In our current definition is also museum is at the service of society. So it is important, and we all museum professionals understand the importance to serve society. What is the meaning of preserving and conserving the heritage if we don't use it to serve society? And museums are the open and best institution about to do that and to work on that. Education and education service, always in contact and in hand to hand with our community. That's the way that we can survive, and that's the way that we survive as society. How we survive? Because society needs us. So that's another thing. Sorry. Sorry, I have a dog who loves to hear my voice. So sorry. So museums foster diversity and sustainability. That's another issue. Because we became foster of diversity, we open our doors to all kind of minorities and all kind of public. When we close our door, people were waiting for the reopen of museum. And I'm talking specifically in Dominican Republic. We have 50 museums. When the pandemic started, all the ICOM investigations said that about between 13 to 19% of museums were going to close worldwide, which means that we have like 85,000 museums around the world, and we were talking about maybe 15,000 museums were going to close. So in Dominican Republic, we said, well, at least half a dozen museums won't be able to open. Well, fortunately, all Dominican museums reopened after the pandemic. And not only reopened, we have new spaces, new museums that we are going to talk about later. And that happened because we were at Service of Society and we fostered diversity and sustainability because we open our doors to everybody. So when the time comes, in the dark times, we decide to become light and the people respond to that. So they give us the battery to continue being light in the society. It is important to open to everybody. You know, everybody have the right to be. I have these two images, and they are the same of one museum, that is the Resistance Museum. And in one, we have a performance of a group of African descendants. That is not, they are really a minority even though we are the majority of African descendants, but the ones who preserve some of their culture are really a minority and very discriminate. So when we were going to celebrate the diversity and non-discrimination, we invite this group. And it was amazing, the response of the public to this open. You know, a lot of people, I mean, there were so many people that we need to ask, you know, to kind of close the doors. So when you open, people respond to be open. So another thing, museums are not neutral. Museum needs to be independent, but not neutral. There is not such a thing as neutrality in museum. It's a choice. You choose you choose to not say anything. You choose to not talk about something. It's a choice. It's not neutrality. It's part of our politics inside the museum, policy inside the museum. So museums are not neutral. Museums have to embrace the society and all the problems in the society. And to do that, museum needs to be independent. And independence means that the professional of education, the professional of heritage inside the museum have the independence to choose what to talk beyond politics. And that's very difficult. And in our country, it's very difficult. And I guess that everywhere is difficult, especially if you need governmental money to survive. So we need to be aware of this and educate about this. Educate the politician in this case to understand that museums are institutions that have to be open, and there are institutions that have to be we need to, somebody have the microphone open.
You can turn off the microphone of the... Sorry. No esiste Amalfi Rodriguez.
Sorry.
Tiene el micro. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I silence. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So back to sorry. Museum needs to educate about the importance of our institution to be core, the central core of one part of the central core of society. That's why we need to be independent, because we, as scientific institutions, we base our knowledge in scientific facts, but also we need to be working with the communities, and the communities have problems, and museums have to be able to talk about that openly and not in a non-political way, to contribute the development of society, to be agent of social change. So when somebody told you that museums are neutral, you can answer, there is not such a thing as neutrality. That's fake, that's not real. Even if you choose neutrality, you are choosing a side. So that's very important. So museums are open to the public, accessible and inclusive. Virtuality during the pandemic. Well, how are we going to survive during the pandemic if we were closed? How we did it? Through virtual to virtuality. Sorry. So many museums in the Dominican Republic couldn't do the virtuality. Many museums just could, close their door and try to survive, lay off people. Sorry. So lay off people and start working. But we have a few museums who start working in virtuality. So we're gonna see some of our museums who work in virtuality. We're gonna have a few examples. We're gonna have a few examples of museums who work in Dominican Republic as in a virtual form. The first one, well, I have a photograph here of the Memorial Resistance Museum, which is, we're gonna see the case truthfully in a few moments with Laura. We have a few actions during the pandemic. Next, we are also going to see the Centro León, which is, we have the biggest virtual program, along with the Natural History Museum and the Carnival Museum, the Carnival Museum. The Carnival Museum, and so I'm not going to talk a lot about Dominican Resistance Memorial Museum and Centro León Museum, because we have two of the participants who are going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Carnival Museum. It's a new museum. They were only open a year before the pandemic. So they were in a tough place, because as all of you know, a museum who is only 1 year open, it will be very difficult to close and reopen and to keep the public interested while they were just beginning. So they made this huge effort, and we need to acknowledge that, because they are in a small town in the center of the island. So they were not very accessible during the pandemic. And they have this very interesting program about visiting the museum, virtually visiting the museum. And they start interviewing a lot of people, and this program is going on, and they are building one of the best archive of Carnival in the country, and probably in many places also. So with the pandemic, they find new ways to enlarge their collection, the intangible collection, and enlarge the way that they approach the public. So the Carnival Museum is very interesting because it's a museum about, carnival, joy, enjoyment, party. It's a happy museum. So it's very colorful. As you can see, the colors of the carnival are wonderful. So they bring joy, they bring enjoyment to the people during the pandemic. They became light during darkest time. And it's very important because we just saw that, and we read about it, that depression were going to go up during the pandemic, and we saw it. And the loss of many families and friends during the pandemic. So those who survive need something to grab, to feel that life goes on and it was worth it to continue. So another museum, and this is very interesting because before the pandemic, the museum, the public museum, the governmental museum, were many of them were closed for renovation. So when the pandemic started, many of the museums were already closed. But this museum, which is a governmental museum, and from my point of view, is probably the best governmental museum in the Dominican Republic. It's the Natural History Museum. And they developed this incredible program during the pandemic and when they reopened. And these programs of engaging the community made the museum, when they reopened, to be one of the most visited museum during the reopening of museum. The natural history is supposed to be, too scientific, but they used this to educate about planetary well-being, about Earth, about environment, about conservation of our natural resources. So they are playing a very important role with children, with the education of the youngs, because the environmental problems are really an issue today, everywhere, worldwide. And in Dominican Republic, maybe because we are an island, but so we are not really that into sharing the well-being of the planetary, we are not big in recycling, we are not big in, so the museum is right now playing a very important role. They have this program every week that they send these small videos about educating and knowledge about environment, basically. And it's very interesting, not only to see the videos, also to see the questions and the reaction to all these videos. And they do it through their social media. So that came with the pandemic, that outgrow the museum. So it was an opportunity in a way for museums. And that's how, I think that's how we survive the pandemic in the Dominican Republic. So after the pandemic, we have new museums, we have new spaces. And as I told you, not one museum of the Dominican Republic succumbed, didn't reopen after the pandemic. All of the museum reopened, which is a great accomplishment. So it's very important to acknowledge that. And it's not also this, we also open new museums. And this is a governmental museum who tried to open and made the inauguration before the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, they really opened. And it's a very interesting because it's an all new museum. It's one of the museums who were closed for renovating. And it's very close to me, this museum. This was my first museum over 30 years ago. And when I visit the new museum, it was like a travel to the past, in the future. It was very complicated inside my head. But this museum reopened, and it's a museum reopening as a new museum. It's a museum about maritime commerce, about colonialism in the Americas. And it's very interesting because even though that is about underwater archaeology, it approach also how to work on environment, you know, the importance of our seas and oceans who belong to everybody. So how the commerce was done 500 years ago, and especially right now, how important is maritime commerce, because it's one of the things that we take for granted. And during the pandemic, we have this this huge problem because the commerce stopped, and we start having problems with pieces, equipment, everything that comes through maritime commerce. So it's interesting to make the connection from the past to today and through the pandemic. So the Mar Museum is Mar means sea in Spanish, but it's also the name of the museum when you use the first letters, Museo de las Atarazanas Reales. The Mar Museum is a wonderful museum, a new wonderful museum who open new, which is very interesting. Another case is this, the Casa Mella Russo is a private museum, and it's an amazing effort of this lady who have this wonderful art collection, and she decided to open it to make it at the service of society. And by her own means, she created this foundation. She bought this beautiful house in the colonial city of Santo Domingo, restored it. It's an incredible space, very small, but where you can find a wonderful collection of art. And what amazes the most is that when you go inside this house, you feel like you are not in the city of Santo Domingo, you know, the rush and all the problems. And it's very interesting that she opened after the pandemic, when everything was in crisis. She bring light to the world of museum in Dominican Republic. And many people ask themselves, well, if they can do it, we can do it. So that's another space that we open. And this is a temporary exhibition that definitely have to be shared with you. the Tobar Immersivus is right now open in the center of the colonial zone of the Santo Domingo. Ivan Tobar is a Dominican artist, surrealist artist. It's an amazing exhibition, but most of it is that it's a private investment, but they put together a whole bunch of companies and also the government, the municipality, the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Tourism. So they managed to put together a whole group of institutions and organizations. And after this huge crisis of the pandemic, because we need to understand that we are in crisis for the pandemic and for the war also, they opened this incredible space for people to enjoy. And this is pure enjoyment. This is pure enjoyment, and it's an open space after the pandemic. So in Dominican Republic, we not only survive, we reopen, and we just showing everybody that we are pushing forward as a society, but also pushing forward as museum. And what is the most important is that the community, the people are answering to this, and they are starting to realize that museums are really important. So that's what I think is one of the keys of our survival. Of course, we're going to talk about that at the end of this conference. How we think are the keys to survive, the different paths that we put together, and we are now everybody open and working and trying to bring light to society, but more of is try to be at the service of society. Now I'm going to give the microphone to Laura, which is going to talk about the museum, the Dominican Resistance Memorial Museum experience. So thank you for your time. I hope that you find this presentation interesting, and we are going to open at the end, but you are welcome to ask any questions that we will answer at the end. Laura, please.
Good morning to all. If it's morning to you, I know there's people all over the world. So as Luisa said, and as Eleonora said, I'm the Deputy Director of the Memorial Museum of the Dominican Resistance. I'm gonna talk about our experience, but not during the pandemic. Why not? Because our, I don't wanna say success, but in our case, our experience of being light during the pandemic and after reopening is not because of luck. It's not out of luck. It's because what I'm gonna tell you. We became light to the community and a safe place for it since our opening. Our museum is in the colonial zone. It's the old part of Santo Domingo City. And as a museum, you probably know, and most of you, the ones that work in museums have done, a part of our work is to reach out to the adjacent community. So that's why we started with our neighbors. But in our case, it was different. Why? Because when we opened in the inauguration day, we closed the street. In the left picture, you have, that's the museum. That's the entrance of the museum. And it's in a small street of the colonial zone. So and the museum is small. So for the opening with all the authorities, the president, etc., we had to close the street. So with the permit of the neighbors, naturally. And that night, after everything finished and all the formal and authorities left, when we started to cleaning up the street and organizing again, all of the street neighbors went out of their homes with champagne to greet us because of our opening and to let us know that they were very happy that the museum was opening in their street, that they were happy to have this museum in their street. So this is how our reach out to the community started. It was very organic, it was very natural, and it was both ways because we were going to do it, but it was like this special thing that the neighbors did to us. After this, we reach out more formally, not only to the street neighbors, but also we contacted the neighborhoods council, the colonial zone. It's a 1 square kilometer, the colonial zone, but it has different neighbors groups, and we reached to all of them and offered our spaces and our help in anything they needed. So they started using our spaces for their meetings. They meet every Monday on the Memorial Museum. All of the colonial zones, neighbors, groups, associations. It's the correct word. And since the beginning, we invited them not only to use the space, but to visit the museum, to visit with their kids, grandkids, etc. So they started to be part of the museum. And right now, not only do they do their meetings on the museum, but they also, Luisa, you can keep it, but they also are the core of our volunteers group. Many of our facilitators are part of the neighborhood. Our volunteers facilitators are part of the neighborhood. So this is one side of our reach out to the community. The other one is that as a memorial museum, you probably know that we work mainly with human rights. In our case, it's teaching human rights through the Dominican people's struggles during the 20th century. And as a teaching institution of human rights, we have been attacked, we might say. We have been attacked in many and different ways. And every time one of these attacks comes, the neighbors are the first one to go to the museum and to show us their support. So this relationship with the Luisa, you can pass that one that's from the inauguration. So our community supports us, our adjacent community supports us all the time. Another thing that we have done is to establish a policy of welcome everybody and open our spaces for all. And with this policy, minority groups have reached out to the museum. Minority groups like women rights organizations, persons with disabilities group, LGBTI groups. All these minorities started doing their activities and their workshops at the museum. Sometimes when they had money, they rented our spaces to help us. It has been a two-way relationship completely. And every time they need the spaces for anything, for a party, for a press conference or whatever, our spaces are available to them. This policy, I want to make I don't know how to say the words in English, but this policy is very important for us, has been very important, because as Luisa was saying in part of her speech, the Dominican society is very racist, very sexist, and very homophobic. So in the case of those minorities that I mentioned, those groups, those persons found a safe place in our museum because they needed a place where they will not be mistreated, discriminated, or judged. And the Memorial Museum has become that place. We were the first formal institution to welcome all these groups. Because of this openness, now the whole community of minorities feel part of our museum and part of our cause. And that's a great support for us to fulfill our mission. So as you can see, Luisa, you can pass the slide. As you can see, we only did two things as formal policies: reach out to the adjacent community and be coherent with what we pray as human rights institution, is that being inclusive and respectful to all human beings. With this work previous to the pandemic and our digital programs, etc., we were able to maintain a relationship with the community during the pandemic. And our community was really eager to go back to the museum. So when we reopened last year, we have had so many visitors and people in the activities. We started slow because we were like kind of shy, let's say. And now our activities are full capacity, each one of them. And for example, the children's activities are every weekend full because our community was eager to come back, because we were a light in a different way before the pandemic. So they wanted to come back. So this is in general the Memorial Museum experience. Now let's hear Maria Elena, my dear friend Maria Elena, with the Centro León experience.
Thank you, Laura. Now we're gonna listen to another experience of success in museum. Maria Elena, you need to tell me when to change the slide and open the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First, good morning, good afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And I'd like to start by thanking the ICOM family for this opportunity to sharing with you, with all of you, our experiences and some of the initiatives that Centro León undertook during these challenging times, perhaps the most challenging that we can remember. Luisa, you can, next one. First, I would like to share some background about Centro León and who we are for those who do not know us. We are a private nonprofit museum located in Santiago de los Caballeros in the Dominican Republic. We opened our doors 19 years ago in 2003 in celebration of the 100th year anniversary of the businesses of the León family, who are the sponsors of the Centro León. We house collections of visual arts, mostly contemporary Dominican art and also Caribbean art, archaeology, photography, folklore, including some funds that have been recognized by UNESCO as heritage of Latin American and Caribbean memory. And our programming focuses on three main axes, which are identities, habitability, and creativity. And every single one of our activities or initiatives have a purpose of education. So while millions were isolated during these very difficult times, culture helped us unite by creating links and shortening the distances between individuals and creating paths that we could walk together. Culture brought us inspiration and also hope and support during these times. Luisa, next. So when the first cases of COVID hit the Dominican Republic, our first actions were to close, of course, our doors and be sure that all of our collaborators and their families were safe or taken care of in case some became sick. And through the entire time of isolation, we were in close contact with every single one of our collaborators with information, daily information about how things were going and understanding how everybody was doing. And since the beginning, everybody who could work from home started working from home. Luisa, next. And we put together, next one too, a whole bunch of strategies. The first thing that we did was to begin reutilizing audiovisual materials from previous activities that had already been recorded so that we could continue to be in contact with our publics with what we had at hand. And this way we could offer concerts, talks, documentaries, and other educational materials that we already had there. So soon after, Luisa, next, we started developing. I'm sorry, I muted myself. So we started strengthening our presence in the virtual arena by creating new content that was specific to be consumed via digital medium. So one thing was the 360 degrees virtual visits to all of our permanent exhibitions and also some of our temporary exhibitions. And continue, Luisa. We continued to generate content with talks and dialogues. We put together different series of programming. Next one, Luisa. For example, getting to know our collections, which was talks by experts, by artists, by national and authorities in art, and talking about our visual arts and archaeology collections. You can continue. A different series was Thinking the Present, which was a series of panels about culture-related topics in light of the current situation that we were living. We continued to have movie clubs, tales readings, and other online experiences for our publics. You can continue, Luisa. And all of this, we tried to continue with strict compliance of our obligations in preserving our patrimony, both by maintaining our collections and also our physical spaces, and all the time planning how the dynamics would change for when we had the opportunity to reopen as soon as we could. Next, Luisa. These are some of the advertisements for our virtual programming. You can continue, Luisa. And I would like to talk a little bit. These are some courses for children, for adults, for artists, for educators. And I'd like to talk a little bit, you can go back about this Oscar de la Renta temporary exhibition that had opened in November of 2019. So we were forced to close our doors just a couple of months after opening with great effort this tremendous exhibition about our Dominican designer, Oscar de la Renta, and his person. So at the time that we had to close, over 42,000 people had physically visited the exhibition, but then we still had months to go, and we didn't want to drop the ball and just have people miss this opportunity. So we created a 360 degrees exhibition, and over 6,000 people within the next couple of months visited that way. And the documentary that we had on YouTube to accompany the exhibition, we posted it on YouTube, and it had over 20,000 reproductions. We can next, Lisa, and here you can see basically how YouTube went up over 100,000 followers, just because most of our programming was going into YouTube to keep people in communication with our institution. You can continue. So another case that I would like to talk about is our art contest, the Eduardo Leon Jimenez Art Contest. It is a biennial contest that the Leon family and their institutions put in place in 1964. And it is a reason of being, it is the reason why we ended up having a museum, because that is where our art collection started to be built. The contest had been announced in 2019 to be open in 2020. And with the pandemic, everything had changed suddenly, but we didn't want to miss a year of the contest. We didn't want to put it off. So thankfully, since a couple of editions back, the process of enrolling on and of the artists submitting their projects was already an online process. So the members of the jury could go ahead and deliberate and evaluate all the projects online in non-traditional ways. One of them was in Spain, another member was in Argentina, another was in the Dominican Republic, and this didn't stop the contest from moving along. So in January 2021, we were able to open, you can show the next one, to open, and it was a somewhat different opening because it was a virtual opening. Our doors were still not open in January 2021. So we created the 360 degrees exhibition for this, and people started visiting, not physically, but online, and having conversations with the artists and doing the guided visits. And then in March, when we were finally able to open the doors, that exhibition was already there for everybody to visit. Luisa, you can continue. We were so proud of the artists, all the work that they did in these difficult circumstances, of our members of the jury, and also of our own team of specialists who were able to put everything up despite all the obstacles that were encountered during this time. You can continue, Lisa. So I want to talk a little, and the next one too, about some of the lessons that we learned through this experience, through this time. For one thing, it is necessary for museums to find new ways to operate and to work, taking into consideration that the world has changed and that it will most probably continue to change indefinitely. These new scenarios suggest the reinvention of all cultural institutions with strategies that are new and that can help us continue to achieve our goals and our missions. These changes seem to move in the direction of combining the presence with the virtual forever, apparently. We found that even having less publics in the beginning, now we are better with the publics that are visiting physically. We're very well in that sense, but having less people come, or no people come at some point, made us aware that we needed to reach out not only to our everyday publics, the publics that were already used to our programming, but also it gave us the opportunity to reach out to publics from all over the world, those publics that could visit us anytime through the online programming. And we also started changing the dynamics of managing our publics. We have become more efficient strategies and mediation strategies, and we have strengthened the training for our mediators so that they are comfortable mediating in different ways and being accessible to different kinds of publics and in different circumstances. And this is one last example that I want to share. Arte para Expresarte, or Art to Express Yourself, was an initiative that we had in 2020 while all the museums were closed. It was a collaboration between our institution, which is a nonprofit, and two for-profit institutions, two advertising firms. In this case was Pajes, BBDO, and Cartel. So museums were closed and the advertisement was down. So we took over 100 billboards in the city of Santo Domingo and turned basically the city into an open air museum and reaching out to people. And we made our works of art, of visual arts, and also our archaeological collections available for millions to see from their cars as they drove by, or when they intentionally came to walk and take a look at these billboards that were all over the place, and continue to engage and interact in social media and get the conversation going. Even though that people could not come in to visit, we went out and reached out to people wherever they were in the city of Santo Domingo. So now more than ever, we look at the future with hope. We have reestablished all of our activities in Centro León in presence, but not forgetting the virtual parts, and we continue to use both ways of being in touch with our publics. We are now certain that so much can be achieved through arts, through culture, and that we can continue to work for the betterment of humankind and the promotion of these virtues that contribute to the collective well-being. From the tradition of our founders, the León family, Centro León has expressed its commitment to the people, both of the Dominican Republic, but also the people of the rest of the world, making a vow that together we could overcome this crisis as we have, and to continue to work together for a better nation and for a better world. So this is a little bit of what our experience has been through these past couple of years. And I really hope that it can be inspiring to you and good ideas for everybody to apply.
Thank you, Maria Elena. I think this experience of Centro León teaches everybody to overcome tragedy and became light in darkness. Now we're gonna talk about ICOM Dominican Republic and capacity building. One of the key that we believe allow us to survive. So I give the microphone to Soraya Perez Gautier, which is the Secretary of ICOM Dominican Republic and, well, part of the ICOM family for a long, long time. So Soraya, you need to tell me when to move the slides, and the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. The first principle of the ICOM Code of Ethics states that adequate opportunities for the continuing education and professional development of all museum personnel should be arranged to maintain an effective workforce. At ICOM Dominican Republic, we have been working since our foundation in training museum personnel through workshops and conferences. Our last achievement is the master's degree in museum studies, and is a pioneer in this area in the postgraduate level in the area. The graduate program in museum studies has been created through an agreement between the Universidad Nacional Pedro Enriquez Ureña and the Dominican Republic National Committee of the International Councils of Museum, being ICOM an organization that set the standards of excellence and best practices in museums. For more than 50 years, ICOM has advocated for the personnel, professional, and technical training of all museum staff and specialists. Inaugurated in May 16, 2018 by former president of ICOM, Suai Aksoy, during the International Museum Day celebrations. In the opening day, Suai Aksoy said that when a rich cultural heritage is intertwined with a difficult history, the need for excellent museum professionals becomes paramount, and what better way to get them than through education. The master's degree offers complete training in the fundamental aspect of managing a museum and is aimed at professionals who work in museums and related institutions. The UNFU provides the academic framework and accreditation, and the ICOM Dominican Republic, as part of the ICOM network, offers up-to-date knowledge from experts and dictates standards of excellence and best practices. Also helps with the teaching assistance. Quoting Suai, she said that the future of our training programs is guided by our regional priorities, which are Latin American and Africa. Our goal is to create regional workshops to meet the specific needs of each geographic area and promote dialogue between countries in the same region. The graduate program is taught actually in Spanish and English with a translation. It aims at providing a holistic training in all the essential aspects that govern museums, with the objective of forming professionals who are able to work in museums and related institutions, thus contributing with the mission of museums of preserving, conserving, and transmitting the natural and cultural heritage of humanity. The program takes 2 years. You can put the next slide, Luisa. The program takes 2 years full-time to complete. The curriculum consists of a core of courses that will provide students with a general knowledge in the theory and practice of museums, complemented by a graduate thesis. It is based on the themes from the ICOM UNESCO manual, How to Manage a Museum, which was translated to Spanish with the ICOM Cuba contribution. With the addition of courses in management, humanities and research, and integration the use of information technology and communication. The program is aimed to professionals from any major field of study who are interested in working in museums or heritage management, both of those who are already working in museums, historic houses, and related institutions, as well as for the people from other areas who envision working in the museum field. It is open to professionals with undergraduate degree in history, art criticism, design, archaeology, anthropology, education, management, accounting, marketing, and advertising, between others. The first group of the master's degree began classes, next slide please, in May 2019, and it is scheduled to graduate in 2022, this year, in July. This group is working in all type of thesis, from technical areas to museography, covering inventory and capacitation. During the 2 years of classes, the master's training included visits to different museums and their departments, which was part of the training. From March 19, 2020, classes were held virtually. The university provided an internet platform called UNFU Virtual. The next slide, please. This is a visit to Centro León. We went as a group to different museums as part of the training. Next slide, please. The university provided an internet platform called UNFU Virtual, which was similar to Google Classroom, where students would download classes and turn in assignments and got all the information we needed. We have an international group of teachers from the United States, Puerto Rico, Spain, and we really thank the university for that effort. Next slide, please. The proposal of continuous training programs for museum training in the Dominican Republic consists of creating an educational offer that meets the training needs in the said sector. Next slide, please. These training programs will train the human capital that form museum the necessary skills. we keep going, the classes kept going virtually. And that is an example of how education can work. We thought it was going to be a really hard challenge for all of us, but we really had a very good experience. But we still think meeting in person is important in some cases. Next slide. This proposal will allow people to expand their knowledge in other areas, develop skills, abilities, and attitudes, and will allow the growth and strengthening of the museums of the Dominican Republic. Next slide. This proposal focuses on museum management, museum education, collection, conservation, and preservation, security and illicit traffic, disaster prevention and management, and museum training. Those are the next courses we are working on, so we can provide technical preparation for the museum staff. Those are basically the courses that the university and the ICOM Dominican Republic are working on. And we think that we are providing or completing two of the objectives of this Museum Day celebration by innovating on the digitalization and accessibility and working with the power of community through education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Soraya. So these are the presentations. Now, let me stop sharing. Okay. So now we're gonna open to this dialogue between the four of us, well, the three of them, actually, because I'm gonna ask them three questions, and then we're gonna open to you, so you can ask also questions. The first question that we have is, why do you think the Dominican Museum, any of the Dominican museums closed definitely because of the pandemic? What do you think happened in our country, in our museum community that allow us to survive? So Soraya, Maria Elena, and Laura, the microphone is open, so you can share your thoughts.
Well, I think basically
Soraya.
the interest of the public was very important to all of us, and the support of the public. People didn't have a lot to do in their houses, so through the social media, we could get going with with delivering information and delivering different type of activities and lectures. And people were really interested. The public was a big part of the success of the museums during the pandemic year.
Also,
Well,
I think, sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Maria Elena, go ahead. Okay, I think we're survivors. The Dominican museums are survivors. We've been struggling since day one because it's not easy for heritage and cultural area to grow and develop in a developing country where priorities are others, is the economical growth, jobs, etc. So we're kind of used to struggling to live and develop with problems. So the pandemic, I think we handle it as another problem. So we didn't give up. We didn't give up because we're used to such. It's not compare. You cannot compare the pandemic with anything else. But we're used to have problems. So I think that's mainly what happened with the Dominican museums.
I think
also
it's
think-
I
Go ahead.
think it's a cooperation of your visitors, your public, you see. So they think that this is essential, that these should be kept open in any cost. So that they have given you and they have allowed you, they have given you the access and they have allowed you that you keep your museums open. Otherwise, if there is a single sound from community against the museum opening, so you would have not been able to open the museums, you see. You have to close them. So it's majorly, it's, I would say, it's awareness, you see. You have a more awareness in your public about how to use museums for benefits. So for, this is